The ending for a licking dog is mostly tragic. Just a second ago, she was being affectionately confessed to. The next second, she was transformed into material for the soul-summoning banner. Senior Brother Chen saw the human-faced spider about to chase after him, immediately suggested that Zhang Zhongqin and Huang Xian enter the magic array to hide. However, as soon as they enter the magic array, Senior Brother Chen turned them into the soul-summoning banner. The only regret is that Zhang Zhongqin and Huang Xian were already severely injured before, so the soul-summoning banner they became wasn't perfect. Seizing the moment when Xiao Tasha turned around, Senior Brother Chen used his hand as a knife, directly stabbing through Xiao Tasha's chest. At this moment, Xiao Tasha couldn't understand why she had helped him kill so many people, done so many things, and just moments ago, they had promised to be together forever. With this one turn, she was going to be transformed into the soul-summoning banner herself. In contrast, Senior Brother Chen had an excited expression on his face. My soul-summoning banner has finally been successfully completed. Once you enter the soul-summoning banner, you can accompany me forever. Surely, you must be delighted in your heart. In this way, I haven't let down my junior sister. I will fulfill my promise and take you out of here. The scene shifts. Pei Ling finally escapes to Screw Mountain City. Pei Ling's spiritual energy is now depleted, and he needs someone's help, and that person is the Lord of Screw Mountain City. Obviously, this time he made the right bet. After receiving the report from his subordinate, the Lord of Screw Mountain City immediately started supplying spiritual energy to Pei Ling. After some recuperation, Pei Ling knelt down directly on both knees. Lord, something bad has happened. That Foundation Realm human-faced spider is coming to kill us. Senior Brother Chen had junior sister Xiao set up a magic array in an attempt to refine the human-faced spider into the soul-summoning banner. The Lord of Screw Mountain City was shocked in his heart. That's a Foundation Realm demon beast. Even I dare not provoke it. Chen nephew has gone mad. Pei Ling quickly added, I don't know what they were thinking. In any case, the plan failed, and everyone scattered and escaped. I was fortunate enough to escape as well. The Lord of Screw Mountain City was cautious as well. After confirming several times that the human-faced spider was indeed heading towards Screw Mountain City, he decided to go and save the people. After all, Screw Mountain City has the array set up by the Holy Sect. Even if he can't defeat it, he can still retreat safely. This made Pei Ling break out in a cold sweat. If he really rescues them, won't he be finished? Pei Ling wanted to persuade him, but the Lord of Screw Mountain City insisted on going to save them. There was no way around it. Pei Ling had to quickly come up with a way to save his own life. Whether the Lord is going to save people or seize treasures, he couldn't leave the Lord's mansion right now. The scene shifts. Senior Brother Chen, who is fleeing in a sorry state, is still thinking. When he gets back, he must make Pei Ling's life a living hell. Screw Mountain City is just ahead. If he can use the city's protective array to kill the human-faced spider, maybe he can make a small fortune. After all, the materials from a Foundation Realm demon beast are not cheap. Just at this moment, the Lord of Screw Mountain City also arrived. Chen Huan hurriedly sought help from the Lord, hoping the Lord could help kill the human-faced spider. Unexpectedly, the Lord rewarded him with a move called Black Tiger Plucks the Heart, and also took away his soul-summoning banner. In just an instant, the Lord completely severed the connection between Senior Brother Chen and the soul-summoning banner. Senior Brother Chen wanted to threaten the Lord with the sect rules, but before he could finish speaking, the human-faced spider chased after him. Seeing his life in danger, Senior Brother Chen hurriedly kowtowed to Duan Mayan, begging for mercy. Consider this soul-summoning banner as my gift to you. Please, Lord, save my life. I am willing to be a servant, to be driven by the Duanmu family for generations to come. However, Duan Mayan ignored Chen Huan, and with a hand gesture, he directly treated Chen Huan as a gift, and presented him to the human-faced spider. He said to the spider, our strengths are equal. Fighting would only result in mutual damage. Moreover, there's the abyssal demonic formation ahead. Please stop here. Although this young cultivator cannot compensate for your loss, it is still my sincere intention. The Foundation Realm human-faced spider is also cunning. After accepting Chen Huan, it turned and left. Back in Screw Mountain City, Duan Mayan, with a sad face, said to Pei Ling, Friend Pei, I'm really sorry. That human-faced spider is truly fierce. I was ultimately a step too late in going there. Chen nephew has already been killed by it. I fought desperately, only managing to snatch Chen nephew's belongings from its mouth. Pei Ling was shocked. So he really went to kill and seize treasures. Pei Ling immediately knelt down on both knees, howling and crying. Senior Brother Chen was such a good person, and now he's gone. I don't know how the other senior brothers and senior sisters are doing. Upon seeing this, Duan Mayan quickly pretended to comfort Pei Ling and said, Your senior brothers and senior sisters are likely to have encountered unfortunate situations as well. Besides some severed limbs, we found some belongings. You should keep them as a memento. Pei Ling looked at the items on the table with disdain. What a memento, there's not a single valuable thing. At that moment, Duan Mayan unexpectedly took out senior brother Chen's soul summoning banner, or rare top-grade spiritual artifact. You should take this as well, he said. Pei Ling was shocked. How can this not be a top-grade spiritual artifact? These were refined using the lives of our fellow disciples. I almost ended up in the mix myself. If I take this, will you spare me? Pei Ling hurriedly added, our group has caused a lot of trouble for Screw Mountain City. I will accept the other belongings, but please let the Lord keep the soul summoning banner. Senior brother Chen, even in the afterlife, would agree with this decision. Duan Mayan was pleased. This kid actually understands social etiquette. However, I have one question. How did senior brother Chen, at the 6th layer of the Foundation establishment realm, die at the hands of the human-faced spider, while you managed to escape? Do you possess exceptional abilities? Faced with Duan Mayan's pressing questions, Pei Ling was surprised. It seemed he had to bring up Li Liu. The reason I came out this time was under Li Liu's orders. If I can't complete the mission, I won't be allowed back to the section I was able to escape solely due to Wulu's secret assistance. However, Li Liu does not want anyone to act in her name. Upon hearing that it was someone from Li Liu, Duan Mayan quickly put on a smiley face and reassured Pei Ling. Don't worry, friend Pei. If you don't mention it, and I don't mention it, Li Liu won't find out. As for your mission, let me handle it. It's easier when there are people within the court. Upon learning that Pei Ling was associated with Li Liu, Duan Mayan quickly returned with the bodies of the purple-eyed ferret and the flower demon, all within the time it takes to burn an incense stick. When Duan Mayan asked Pei Ling to present the sex insignia to complete the mission, Pei Ling was dumbfounded. It turned out that senior brother Chen and the others never intended to assign him a mission. They only wanted to bring him out to be refined into the soul summoning banner. Fortunately, he could submit the necessary procedures at the General Affairs Hall. Now, the biggest problem was that Pei Ling hadn't raised enough funds to pay the penalty for killing 3 fellow disciples. If he were to return now, he would undoubtedly be warmly greeted by the relatives and friends of those 3 individuals. However, just as Pei Ling was about to express his desire to stay a few more days, Duan Mayan exerted his authority. It's not that I don't want friend Pei to stay longer, but you are the only one who survived this trip. It's easy for others to accuse you of conspiring to harm your teammates. Besides, friend Pei, you wouldn't want to shoulder the crimes under the name of the Holy Maiden, would you? Return early and report to clear your name. Fortunately, I have evidence from the Hall of Duties to prove your innocence. If you think Duan Mayan did this for Pei Ling's benefit, then you are gravely mistaken. Once Pei Ling safely returns, others will surely think that he employed some means to harm his fellow disciples. Duan Mayan will also be able to clear his own suspicion. After all, the soul summoning banner was a gift from Pei Ling, not something he stole for himself. From another perspective, if Pei Ling is truly associated with Li Liu, then helping him could be considered doing a favor for someone who's riding the wave of success. In this operation, Duan Mayan would benefit no matter how you look at it. Pei Ling let out a deep sigh. Since it was the case, he could only leave Screw Mountain City and find an opportunity to escape. However, what Pei Ling never expected was that this old man had no sense of fairness and directly arranged a corpse cloud with automatic patrol, leaving him no chance to escape. The scene shifts to elderly Ping's residence at Huayin Peak. Han Su, Li Si's grandmother, is filing a complaint to elderly Ping. Master, Li Si is your own grandson. You must seek revenge for him. Li Ping's eyes glint with fierceness as he asks about the disciples assigned to Li Si's courtyard, only to be informed that they have been taken care of. Li Ping becomes furious. You eliminated such an important witness. Use your brain and think. How could Pei Ling, with his abilities, have killed all 3 of them simultaneously? The key to this matter doesn't lie with Pei Ling but with the mastermind behind him. Furthermore, Li Si and the others died under a peculiar knife technique. Within the holy sect, the only one who possesses such a mysterious knife technique is Jin Jinshan. Jin Jinshan also has a conflict with Miao Qingyang, who is also an inner sect master. Pei Ling was most likely commanded by Jin Jinshan to kill Miao Qin, and Li Si happened to be unfortunate enough to be implicated. Now that Pei Ling has been taken out of the sect by Qin Huan, he is probably already trapped within the soul summoning banner. As for Jin Jinshan, since he is distantly related to Li Liu, I have no concrete evidence, and I can't act recklessly. You should pass on this information to the Miao and Zhou families and ask would-be Zhou to contain Li Liu. This will allow Miao Qingyang to deal with Jin Jinshan. Without Li Liu as protection, Jin Jinshan is no match for Miao Qingyang. Jin Jinshan, who was teaching the female disciples, suddenly gets beaten up by Miao Qingyang, who shows up at the door. The disciples inside the door were about to step forward to help, but they were shouted away by Jin Jinshan. As the leader of the prestigious Jian Sang lineage, Where should I put my face if I let the disciples help? Facing the furious Miao Qingyang, Jin Jinshan can only evade his anger. After careful inquiry, he realizes that he has indeed killed Miao Chen. Jin Jinshan is bewildered. How could I not know about this? He was just about to explain, but Miao Qingyang launches an attack before Jin Jinshan can fully explain. Jin Jinshan can only defend himself while attempting to clarify the situation. However, all the evidence points to Jin Jinshan, and Miao Qingyang refuses to believe his explanation. You still won't admit it? Didn't you threaten to seek revenge on me a few days ago? Jin Jinshan feels a crack opening within him. Which bastard spread my provocative words? Yes, I did say those words, but I absolutely did not kill Miao Chen. However, consumed by rage, Miao Qingyang is set on seeking revenge and pays no heed to Jin Jinshan's explanations. He relentlessly attacks Jin Jinshan. When Jin Jinshan opens his eyes again, Miao Qingyang is already gone. I was actually knocked unconscious. Now my face is completely lost. Enraged and feeling powerless, Jin Jinshan immediately declares his intention to report to the Elders' Hall. However, his disciples inform him that before leaving, Miao Qingyang stated that he would personally go to the Elders' Hall to pay the fine. He also mentioned sparing Jin Jinshan's life this time out of respect for Li Liu. Hearing this, Jin Jinshan is consumed by anger and wonders who framed him. Meanwhile, Pei Ling, the instigator of this entire incident, is still thinking about how to get Jin Jinshan's help in dealing with the fine of 90,000 spirit stones. Upon returning to the sect, Pei Ling first goes to the administrative hall to fulfill his task. After some maneuvering, Pei Ling successfully obtains 167 low-grade spirit stones. These spirit stones can buy quite a few things at the treasure pavilion. If it weren't for those three, however, just as Pei Ling walked out of the administrative hall, he was taken away by the Elders' Hall personnel. The Elders' Hall is formidable indeed, as they recounted the entire process of Pei Ling's aggression with solid evidence. Pei Ling couldn't argue and could only obediently sign and stamp. Fortunately, the Elders' Hall was relatively fair and only fined Pei Ling 74,800 spirit stones. Pei Ling was instantly at a loss for words. Can I really gather this many spirit stones in 3 months? But in the next moment, the Elders' Hall steward delivered good news to Pei Ling. You don't need to worry about the fine. The Miao, Zhou, and Li families want to pay off the fine for you and buy your life. The Elders' Hall has determined that you don't have the ability to repay, so they agreed to their request. Pei Ling was shocked. How can you disregard all principles? Didn't we agree on 3 months? The Elders' Hall steward sneered. Principles can be changed. The interests of the sect come first. At this critical moment of life and death, Pei Ling had a sudden idea. Wait a minute. I can repay in 3 months. I can have Jin Jinshan, the head of the Jin lineage in the inner sect, vouch for me. He was the one who brought me into the outer sect. The Elders' Hall steward pondered for a moment. Although Jin Jinshan doesn't get along with the Miao family, he is Li Liu's distant relative. The Elders' Hall will give face in this regard. So he said to Pei Ling, let's go and pay a visit to Jin Jinshan, the head of the Jin lineage, and see if he is willing to vouch for you. But if there's even a hint of falsehood, you'll face severe consequences. Meanwhile, Jin Jinshan, who was drowning his sorrows with alcohol, was suddenly interrupted by a knock on the door. It turned out to be representatives from the Elders' Hall coming to visit him. Jin Jinshan also had a gloomy expression. He suspected that one of his disciples had caused trouble again, but he couldn't show his face in his current state, so he could only pretend to be in seclusion and communicate from a distance. It turned out that they came to him because Pei Ling couldn't produce the fine for killing 3 people. Upon hearing this, Jin Jinshan, burning with anger, didn't care about his reputation anymore. He rushed out and grabbed Pei Ling by the throat. So, you're the one who killed Miao Chen. I'm taking the blame for your mess. Jin Jinshan at that moment wished he could chop Pei Ling into pieces and barbecue him. However, due to his relationship with Li Liu, he couldn't do anything to Pei Ling. He had no choice but to suppress his anger and help Pei Ling sign the contract. Once the Elders' Hall representatives were gone, Pei Ling was overjoyed. My life is saved. But in the next moment, Jin Jinshan punched him. Fortunately, it was just a warning to scare Pei Ling, like swatting a fly. Pei Ling sensed a hint of killing intent in that punch. Jin Jinshan, who had already walked back to the courtyard, casually asked about the amount of the fine. After all, he was the guarantor. Upon learning that it was over 74,000 spirit stones, Jin Jinshan instantly spat out a mouthful of blood. Even as an inner sect lineage head, I can't come up with so many spirit stones. How can an outer sect disciple like you repay it? They're clearly setting me up. If it weren't for Liu's protection, I'd be barbecued by now. What surprised Chen Jinshan the most was that the 3 people Pei Ling killed turned out to be 2 at the 4th level of the Foundation Establishment Realm and 2 at the 5th level of the Foundation Establishment Realm. To be able to simultaneously kill 3 cultivators with higher cultivation levels and barely sustain any injuries was truly extraordinary. No wonder Liu took an interest in him, but the fact remained that he couldn't come up with over 74,000 spirit stones. He could only inform Pei Ling of the ways to earn spirit stones and let Pei Ling figure out a way to gather some. If he still couldn't repay, Chen Jinshan would have to fill the hole for him. Pei Ling also hurriedly thanked Chen Jinshan. After all, he had gained an additional 3 months of life. Then he happily bounced away, leaving Chen Jinshan alone in the chaotic wind. It was a similar situation of fighting beyond one's level. Why was it that Pei Ling emerged unscathed while he himself was covered in wounds? The scene changed. A seductive mature woman dressed in revealing attire was wielding a whip, ruthlessly lashing a woman kneeling on the ground. The woman being whipped not only harbored no resentment but also had a face filled with enjoyment. She even made unreasonable requests for more intense punishment because the master said that one must learn to endure pain in order to forge instruments of even greater suffering for the punished. Such a bizarre scene instantly killed Pei Ling's interest in forging instruments. He turned around and arrived at Talisman Mountain. Pei Ling had intended to perform well, but after a series of extravagant and nonsensical movements, he could only draw Mario. What surprised Pei Ling even more was that the talisman paper used for crafting was made from human skin. And the first lesson in crafting involved personally selecting a living person on the spot and skinning them to make talisman paper. Naturally, Pei Ling stayed far away from such a bloody scene. Since forging instruments and crafting talismans were not feasible, he decided to take a look at beast taming. Unexpectedly, the beast taming instructor, who had just emphasized the need to fully trust the spirit beasts, had his arm bitten off by a spirit beast the next moment. This frightened Pei Ling, and he fled. This was truly the style of a sinister section. Was there nothing that a normal person could learn? However, there was still one last option: alchemy. If all else failed, he simply wouldn't learn it. He could sell the life-loathing blade and pay the fine. Fortunately, the lecturer at Elixir Mountain seemed relatively normal, which gave Pei Ling a glimmer of hope. Just as Pei Ling was attentively listening to the lecture, the system suddenly popped up with a notification. It detected that someone outside was teaching alchemy, and the system was recording it. Pei Ling felt great joy in his heart. Finally, this dog-like system had done something right. With the completion of the system's recording, Pei Ling could already envision himself reaching the pinnacle of life. With the support of the system, Pei Ling didn't want to waste a single moment. He immediately went to the herb shop of the alchemy instructor at Danfeng and purchased 2 sets of alchemy materials. Then, with great excitement, he rented a grade D alchemy room to prepare for alchemy. Pei Ling still had some worries about his situation. However, upon further thought, he realized that with Chen Jinshan as his guarantor for the incident of killing Miao Chen and the others, there shouldn't be any problems. As for the matter with Chen Huan, Duan Mayan probably had it handled by now. His top priority was to focus on alchemy and earn spiritual stones. With no worries, Pei Ling immediately summoned the system and activated the one-click automated mode. After the system operated for a long half-hour, the first batch of tempering bone pills was finally refined. This batch yielded a total of 12 pills, with a color even more pure than the ones he had obtained from Chen Jinshan. This filled Pei Ling with hope for the future. 2 batches in an hour, and 12 hours a day. Without eating or drinking, he could produce 12 batches in 3 months. That would be a total of 79,920 spiritual stones. As Pei Ling thought of this, he immediately started the next batch of refining. However, things didn't go as planned. Just as he placed the herbs in the alchemy furnace, the furnace exploded. At the moment of Pei Ling's confusion, the system also prompted with a message: insufficient host spiritual power. Alchemy failed. The cultivation session in automated mode ends here. Pei Ling was speechless. If his spiritual power was insufficient, why didn't the system notify him earlier? After all the fuss, he ended up losing 10 spiritual stones. However, the urgent matter at hand was to sell the first batch of pills at the treasure house and get the furnace repaired for them. However, just as Pei Ling arrived at the treasure house, he received some bad news from the conversation of passers-by. The purchasing price for tempering bone pills was only 5 spiritual stones. It was truly a cutthroat business. There was no choice, even if he had to sell, no matter how little money he would get. However, due to Pei Ling's shabby appearance, the process of selling the medicine was quite depressing. As soon as he entered the treasure house, he was mocked by a parrot. After much difficulty, he reached the room for selling pills, only to be scolded by a beautiful alchemist's lackey. When he presented the pills, he was ridiculed by the store's purchaser. Fortunately, the system was more reliable this time. The tempering bone pills he refined turned out to be high-grade pills. As soon as he opened the medicine bottle, a strong aroma of the pills filled the air. However, the store purchaser still believed that Pei Ling, in his shabby appearance, couldn't possibly produce such good pills. They thought he must have picked them up by luck. Pei Ling was speechless. "If I wasn't in need of money, I would show you my real skills." Fortunately, the experienced store owner who purchased the pills had rich experience. The moment he smelled the pill's fragrance, he slapped the store's lackey across the face. Then he pulled the lackey up and apologized to Pei Ling, offering to purchase his tempering bone pills for 40 spiritual stones. Hearing this, Pei Ling felt ecstatic, but in order to sell at a better price, he immediately put on a troubled expression. The genius alchemist Jin Sumian also looked at Pei Ling with admiration in an instant. It should be noted that tempering bone pills had inexpensive materials, and the difficulty of refining high-grade pills was much higher than that of foundation-building pills. This pill must have been created by a master. If she could study it, perhaps her alchemy skills would advance further. Jin Sumian grabbed Pei Ling's hand and placed it on her chest, expressing willingness to pay 50 spiritual stones for the pills. Furthermore, he would recommend Pei Ling to the senior alchemist of the inner sect, Elder Shen, and introduce him to the sect. Just as Pei Ling was about to bow down before Jin Sumian, the store owner hurriedly stood between Pei Ling and Jin Sumian. First, he threatened Jin Sumian not to compete with the treasure house for business. Then he informed Pei Ling that the treasure house was willing to purchase his tempering bone pills for 60 spiritual stones. Moreover, in the future, the treasure house would offer a premium of 20% for Pei Ling's pills. An unwilling Jin Sumian was also reminded by Ma to consider what was more important, spiritual stones or prospects. "Junior brother Pei, you should think it through." Meanwhile, Pei Ling found himself caught between the choice of receiving 60 spiritual stones and joining a prestigious master. He decisively chose the 60 spiritual stones, leaving Jin Sumian speechless in response. On the other hand, the store owner at the treasure house had an excited expression on his face. After all, such a big profit was rare to come by. The store owner, who had adjusted his mindset, quickly reminded him not to mix the high-grade pills with other pills as it could affect their purity. However, the next moment, everyone present was stunned and unbelieving. Pei Ling's 12 tempering bone pills were all high-grade pills. It should be noted that even for a grandmaster alchemist, it would take dozens of attempts to refine a single high-grade tempering bone pill. To produce so many at once, only an extraordinary recluse in the deep mountains could accomplish it. The store owner, who had realized what happened, quickly put aside his airs and asked Pei Ling to help introduce the alchemist. Jin Sumian, with a shy expression, took out a bottle of foundation-building pills from her chest and handed it to Pei Ling. She also naturally wrapped his arm around her chest, clearly hoping for Pei Ling's assistance in the introduction. However, Pei Ling remained unmoved. Although the soft touch was extremely enjoyable, as a foundation establishment realm cultivator without any backing, if others were to find out that he had refined high-grade pills, according to the style of these sinister sects, he would undoubtedly be captured and forced to become an alchemy machine, enduring daily beatings with a small whip. Thinking of this, Pei Ling quickly explained, "How could I know any extraordinary hermit? These pills were bestowed upon me by Jinjinshan, the sect's inner sect elder." The store owner was puzzled, saying he hadn't heard that Jinjinshan practiced alchemy. Jin Sumian, too, half believed Pei Ling's explanation, judging from the touch he felt earlier that Pei Ling's hands didn't seem like those of someone who had been practicing alchemy for years. It's impossible to refine so many high-grade pills, and only an outsider would take such precious pills to sell at the treasure house. And Jinjinshan happens to be a distant relative of Li Liu. Perhaps it's true that he met a grandmaster through this connection. In that case, let's go visit Jinjinshan. With Jinjinshan as a scapegoat, Pei Ling finally managed to escape smoothly. After deducting the costs, he earned a total of 620 spiritual stones and an additional bottle of foundation-building pills. If I had known that alchemy could be so profitable, why would I bother with missions? However, joy turned to sorrow as Pei Ling was envisioning his future. A chilling aura suddenly enveloped him, and a pink spirit chain appeared out of nowhere, tightly binding Pei Ling. Having experienced a similar incident before, Pei Ling only felt slightly surprised before realizing the situation. But Wu Lu, the young lady, instantly appeared, lightly licking her finger and smiling. "Pei Ling, it's been a while," she said. However, in the next moment, her expression turned serious. "The deadline of 7 days is up. I wonder how your vanishing technique cultivation is going. Child Pei. Pei Ling desperately held onto his composure and forced a smile. I have mastered the vampire vanishing technique. Please release your suppression and let me demonstrate. Wu Lu looked incredulous and then pointed to a withered tree in the distance, gesturing for Pei Ling to use the vampire vanishing technique to break off a branch and bring it back. Child Pei, you better not be thinking of fooling around and deceiving me, otherwise. But before Wu Lu could finish her sentence, Pei Ling had already activated the technique. With a swift movement, he retrieved the branch. Seeing that Pei Ling had actually mastered the vampire vanishing technique within the 7 days, Wu Lu was greatly shocked. You actually managed to learn it? Pei Ling scratched his head and said silently, what's wrong? Didn't you say I had to learn it within 7 days? Wu Lu, feeling ashamed and angry, instantly disappeared without a trace. Pei Ling, who was confused, wore a face of speechlessness. Is she just leaving like that? At the same time, Wu Lu's figure appeared in Li Liuyu's room to report the matter of Pei Ling mastering the technique ahead of schedule. Li Liuyu furrowed her brows and asked indifferently, the appointed time hasn't arrived yet. Why did you go there in advance to spy on his progress? Wu Lu dared not conceal the truth and trembled as she spoke. In response to Master, I originally wanted to play a prank on Pei Ling. I took the liberty of changing the half-month cultivation time to 7 days. As soon as the words fell, Li Liuyu let out a cold snort. Wu Lu instantly started bleeding from her 7 orifices, crying out in pain. Li Liuyu's gaze turned icy. Get out, don't let this happen again. Wu Lu, completely unscathed, left the room. Jiao and I, who had been waiting outside, let out a sigh of relief and advised, Master dislikes it most when we act on our own. Luckily, this time, you weren't harmed. If your soul imprint had been shattered, it would have been disastrous. Wu Lu was listless and dispirited. That brat took advantage of Master so much. Little did I know that Master would. Jiao and I sighed softly and said in a low voice, Master's virgin has been broken, causing her cultivation technique to backfire. Her position as the Holy Maiden is at stake, forcing her into seclusion, and someone is taking advantage of the situation. Even our hound was beaten. However, Master has always been far-sighted and prudent. We shouldn't worry too much. Meanwhile, inside the sect, Li Liuyu was meditating and cultivating, holding the 6 Desires Manual. Could it be that the 6 Desires Manual is truly too powerful? No one within the sect could restore it. Unexpectedly, he was able to incorporate the 6 Desires Manual into his body and, through dual cultivation, channel its power into my body. Although it shattered my virgin, it greatly increased my cultivation. However, the progress of our dual cultivation in the past half-month has been slow, far inferior to the first cultivation. Could it be that it requires his initiative? I'll know when I try again in the future. Thinking of this, Li Liuyu's face blushed slightly. At this moment, Li Liuyu was probably unable to distinguish whether the strong desire to dual cultivate with Pei Ling stemmed from a craving for power or an emotional release. On the other hand, Pei Ling, who was completely focused on alchemy, had successfully refined 5 furnaces of pills today. 1 furnace was destroyed, 1 furnace was consumed by Pei Ling to replenish spiritual energy, and the remaining 3 furnaces produced a total of 39 high-grade bone-tempering pills. With the improvement brought about by the pills, Pei Ling's cultivation had successfully advanced to the 5th level of the Foundation Establishment realm. Now the only problem was how to safely sell the pills. Continually relying on Jinjinshan as a scapegoat might raise suspicions. After much contemplation, Pei Ling finally decided to go and sell the pills in disguise as a woman. However, their disguise was quickly seen through by the old shopkeeper of the treasure house, who even made a teasing remark. Young people these days always like to play around with some tricks. I understand. Embarrassed, Pei Ling had no choice but to hastily leave. Seeing that the disguise wouldn't work, Pei Ling had to seek help from Jinjinshan. However, before Pei Ling could enter, they heard a commotion from inside. Assessing the situation, Pei Ling quickly hid behind a tree to observe. They heard a loud bang, and a domineering woman stormed out of Jinjinshan's courtyard, grumbling and cursing at him. Clearly, she was not someone to be trifled with. Soon after, Jin Sumian, who was beside her, she comforted her. Just a mere alchemy master, it's better not to see him. Your cousin has already secured the task of obtaining the cold marrow fire for you. Once you refine the cold marrow fire, your alchemy skills will definitely advance further. Watching the 2 women leave, Pei Ling felt a shock in his heart. Alchemy master, could it be because of me? With this thought in mind, Pei Ling was about to slip away when Jinjinshan suddenly appeared and caught him red-handed. Jinjinshan, who was already feeling frustrated, became even more infuriated upon seeing Pei Ling. Ever since Pei Ling joined, he had always been beaten up. What do I know about alchemy masters? Getting slapped is one thing, but you even kicked down the door to my courtyard. Observing Pei Ling acting suspiciously, Jinjinshan immediately had a bad feeling. He suspected that Pei Ling was involved in the earlier incident. Pei Ling naturally wouldn't admit it, but Jin Jinshan wasn't easily fooled. He immediately declared that he would confront Pei Ling. Seeing no way to escape, Pei Ling had no choice but to confess the truth. Upon learning the truth, Jin Jinshan couldn't bear it any longer. He grabbed Pei Ling and exclaimed, "Do you think I'm easy to bully? You've deceived me time and time again. Today, I won't let you off without killing you." In a critical moment, Pei Ling urgently called for Wu Lu to come and save him. With Pei Ling's shout, Jin Jinshan also calmed down. After all, Wu Lu was the ghost attendant of Li Liu. Perhaps all of this was orchestrated by Li Liu herself. Suppressing his anger, Jin Jinshan wanted to provide a way out for both sides. Immediately, Jin Jinshan expressed that if Pei Ling could really refine the tempering bone pill, he would let him off the hook. Then he prepared the pill furnace and medicinal materials for Pei Ling to refine the pill on the spot. It is worth mentioning that after Ouyang Xianqing prepared everything, she also cheered Pei Ling on with extreme gentleness. This was the first time since Pei Ling joined that he felt cared for, and for a moment, he couldn't help but be captivated by Ouyang Xianqing's presence. However, this wonderful feeling lasted only a few seconds before Jin Jinshan brought him back to reality. Pei Ling didn't dare to delay and quickly activated the system to start alchemy. Half an hour later, a batch of high-grade tempering bone pills was successfully refined. While Ouyang Xianqing praised him endlessly, Jin Jinshan's face was filled with jealousy. Such extraordinary talent in alchemy. It's no wonder Li Liu took notice of him, since Li Liu valued Pei Ling so much. As Jin Jinshan, the lapdog, he naturally couldn't let his goddess down. He immediately expressed that once Pei Ling's cultivation reached the 5th level of the Foundation Establishment realm, he would grant him a great opportunity. However, the next moment, Jin Jinshan was surprised to discover that Pei Ling was already at the 5th level of the Foundation Establishment realm. In just a few days since joining, Pei Ling had cultivated to the 5th level of the Foundation Establishment realm. This unparalleled talent in pill cultivation and terrifying speed of cultivation couldn't be described with just the word genius. Pei Ling, on the other hand, was pondering about what kind of opportunity could be more important than making money. When he learned that it involved going to the Gu Abyss to refine the cold marrow fire, Pei Ling was instantly speechless. The shrew from earlier had mentioned taking the cold marrow fire. Getting beaten by Jin Jinshan was one thing, but he didn't want to make any more enemies. It would be better to quietly focus on alchemy. Seeing Pei Ling's lack of ambition, Jin Jinshan immediately started brainwashing him. However, Pei Ling was not an ordinary person. He was the king of surviving in adversity, and how could he be swayed by a few words? There's no other way. Jin Jinshan had to promise Pei Ling that if he could refine the cold marrow fire, he would help Pei Ling pay the fine for killing Miao Chen and the other two. As soon as Pei Ling heard this, he became instantly interested. Seeing Pei Ling agree, Jin Jinshan quickly arranged for 3 disciples at the Foundation realm to accompany and protect Pei Ling. Pei Ling was taken aback by such a grand arrangement, knowing that it must be extremely dangerous. Immediately, he thought of using Wu Lu's name to convince Jin Jinshan to go along as well. However, Jin Jinshan appeared hesitant. After all, he was just a branch master of the lower 5 veins, and there were the middle 5 veins and upper 3 veins above him. Taking this opportunity forcibly would require him to make arrangements outside. However, in order to ensure Pei Ling's safety, Jin Jinshan still gave Pei Ling 100 miles escape talisman for protection. Under Jin Jinshan's arrangement, Pei Ling, along with the 3 senior disciples, set off to seize the cold marrow fire at the Gu Abyss. However, on the way, Pei Ling was constantly mocked by Fan Ji and Shuang. After all, the situation of the joint mulberry vein itself was not very good, and they were wasting resources to fight for this task, all for an outer disciple. It was inevitable for people to complain. Fortunately, Ouyang Xianqing stood up for Pei Ling, preventing him from feeling too embarrassed. However, the next moment, Ouyang Xianqing grabbed Pei Ling and jumped into a deep abyss. At the same time, upon receiving the news that Pei Ling had entered the Gu Abyss, Miao Qingyang immediately decided to go to the Gu Abyss to kill Pei Ling. After all, if Pei Ling died in the Gu Abyss, not only would the Hall of Attendants be unable to investigate, but the task that Jin Jinshan had worked so hard to obtain would also be in vain. It was truly killing 2 birds with 1 stone. The only thing that puzzled Miao Qingyang was that the cold marrow fire had already been reserved by Jin Sumian of the middle 5 veins. Why did Jin Jinshan forcefully snatch this task? Just then, Jin Jinshan unexpectedly risked being beaten and came to challenge Miao Qingyang. The scene shifted to Pei Ling inside the Gu Abyss, enduring the torment of the sinister aura entering his body. Fortunately, Ouyang Xianqing was there to help him transmit spiritual power in time, which prevented Pei Ling from collapsing midway. Seeing Pei Ling so weak, Fang Ji immediately began mocking him, while Ouyang Xianqing naturally tried to defend him. Shuang quickly stepped in to mediate, asking Ouyang Xianqing to save his spiritual power for himself and assuring Pei Ling that he would take care of it. Pei Ling glanced at Shuang, thinking that this guy seemed honest and wouldn't betray him, right? As they were talking, they arrived at the entrance of the dream forest. Shuang casually found a wooden stick and told Pei Ling to hold onto it tightly, advising him to ignore everything they see and just follow him. Pei Ling readily agreed, thinking that this wooden stick was his lifeline. However, as soon as they entered the dream forest, Shuang disappeared. Fortunately, Pei Ling still had the wooden stick in his hand, which relieved him a little, but the next moment, the wooden stick in his hand turned into Li Liuyu's little hand. Pei Ling felt suspicious. How could Li Liuyu be here? What surprised Pei Ling even more was that Li Liuyu immediately tackled him to the ground and began removing their own clothes without any hesitation. Seeing Li Liuyu's stunning and naked body, Pei Ling's mind was in turmoil. Any man would find it hard to resist such a seductive scene. No, it's not possible to engage in dual cultivation in front of everyone's eyes. Li Liuyu wouldn't be so proactive. It must be an illusion. Just as Li Liuyu was about to reach the final step, Pei Ling struggled with all his might and managed to escape from under Li Liuyu. However, in the spot where Pei Ling was lying, several vines suddenly appeared inexplicably. Pei Ling was shocked, realizing how close he was to death. With the illusion exposed, the illusionist no longer pretended and directly summoned multiple vines to attack Pei Ling. Pei Ling wouldn't just sit back and wait for death. He immediately used the blood slaughter knife technique to strike at the illusionist with a slash. At the critical moment, Ouyang Xianqing appeared in time, pulling Pei Ling out of the illusion. As Pei Ling calmed down, he was instantly covered in cold sweat. It turned out that the slash he made wasn't at the illusionist but at himself. If it weren't for senior sister Xianqing risking her life to catch the life-loathing blade with her bare hands, Pei Ling would have been dismembered.